start. Fantastic. Great. So welcome to everybody who's come along this morning, for those that are joining us virtually as well. Just by way of explanation first, as to why I'm sat here, I think many of you will know that Sarah Dykes was appointed as chair of CLEP, so she's no longer a member of this board, and therefore I'm helping to chair the meetings until a new CLEP deputy chair is appointed and the chair of the accountability board has been appointed as well. So you've got the privilege of my company today. If we could start first and foremost with introductions, and welcome to a couple of members who are substituting. So if I could ask for introductions, I think we'll start. Councillor Webber, can we start with you, please?
Thank you very much indeed. I'm the Cabinet Member at Essex County Council for Economic Renewal, Infrastructure and Planning. And yes, I am Leslie Wagner.
Roger Goff, Leader, Kent County Council.
Good morning, Nick Bennett, Deputy Leader, East Sussex County Council and Director of CG Sussex and the Hastings and Bexhill Renaissance.
I'm Helen Dyer, Programme Manager at SEDEC.
And I'm Simon Cook, Chair of, but also the Further Education and Skills Rep.
Thanks, Simon. Good morning, everyone. Adam Bryan, the Chief Executive of the LEP.
Morning, Deborah Arnold, Deputy Leader of Thurrock Council, Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care and Health.
Rodney Chambers, Medway Council.
Thank you, Rodney. And if I can go to our virtual attendees, please. I think we have Councillor George, Rosemary and Michael online.
Yes, Councillor Stephen George, Leader of Southend City Council.
Hello, Rosemary Nunn. Apologies, camera's broken. University of Greenwich Higher Education Representative.
Fantastic, thank you. And can I just check, we've got Michael Newman, the Section 151 officer there as well?
Apparently waiting to get in, Amy. Okay, I'll check.
Fantastic. And Michael, we've got you on screen. Would you like to introduce yourself? Getting your finger to the mute button quickly enough.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Michael Newman, Head of Finance at Essex County Council. I'm representing the Accountable Body Section 151 officer.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks very much. Okay, so for those of you who are here, you know much of this will be usual. For those of you that are new, just let you know that we've got microphones on the table and be switched on throughout the meeting. If you wish to speak on any comments, if you could just grab my eye so that I know that you'd like to speak and raise your hand. Members of the public can join the meeting, and officers are listening into the discussion both in person and virtually. And a recording of the meeting will be available via the CLEP website after the meeting has concluded. For those of you who are attending the meeting virtually, if you can please not use the chat function on Zoom, as it won't be monitored during the meeting. And for those attending virtually, if there are any technical issues, just please stay on the call and we'll resolve the issue as quickly as possible, as you have just seen in action just now. There aren't any items requiring confidential discussion. And Helen, would you be able to just let me know the apologies there, please?
Yes, so we've had apologies from Councillor Glazier, who is represented by Councillor Bennett, and from Councillor Bentley, who's represented by Councillor Wagland, and from Councillor Cockshaw, who's represented by Councillor Arnold.
Great, thank you very much. Can we move on to the minutes of the last meeting? For those that were here on the 25th of November, could we confirm those as a correct record of the meeting then, please?
Agreed.
Yeah, thank you very much. And are there any declarations of interest to be made by members in accordance with the Members' Code of Conduct?
I probably should declare that I have filled in the declaration in connection with the memberships that I've just described.
Brilliant, thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, so if we move on to questions from the public, I think we have one public question that has been received. Adam, you're going to be reading out the question and the response for us as the member of public can't attend.
Yes, thank you, Simon. So I'll read the question first, and then I'll be very clear when the question ends and our response begins. So as the question goes, The Select Accountability Board awarded Sea Change Sussex £4 million worth of additional public LGF grant monies on the 23rd of February 2018 for the Queensway Gateway Road project. East Sussex County Council reported that Sea Change needed the additional grant funding partly for the following reason on page 118 and 119 of the board agenda pack. Quote, whilst the Queensway Gateway project is currently allocated £6 million, there have been cost increases to the project. The original project cost included the provision of a compensation cost for the relocation of Bartlett's SEAT car showroom at the eastern end of the proposed road alignment, based on the dealership being able to finance the bulk of their relocation costs. However, the dealership has not been able to secure the necessary funding to fully finance this move, so additional funding has been required to enable this relocation. And that's the end of the quote. And in relation to the North Queensway GPF project on page 83, open the quote, the second tenant, Bartlett's SEAT car showroom, will be locating at the North Queensway site, but this has been agreed as part of the funding package to relocate the business to enable the completion of the North Queensway Gateway LGF project. Sea Change never offered the SEAT car dealership any compensation or funding assistance towards its relocation costs, despite having received the additional £4 million of LGF funding from Select. Instead, Sea Change threatened the car dealership with the CPO, which would put them out of business with the loss of 19 skilled local jobs. Meanwhile, the full £10 million worth of Queensway Gateway Road LGF grant has been spent by Sea Change, and the SEAT car showroom remains in the same location. Sea Change is now proposing an alternative signalised connection of the Queensway Gateway Road to the A21 that revokes the need for the SEAT car dealership to relocate. Therefore, the approved purpose for which a sizable proportion of the additional £4 million worth of LGF public funding was awarded in 2018 has also been revoked. Will the Select Accountability Board commit to claw back the proportion of LGF grant money from Sea Change that it approved and paid to assist with the relocation of the SEAT car showroom? If not, please can the Select Accountability Board provide an explanation as to why it has approved that Sea Change is still to be paid large sums of LGF public grant money for works or services not received? And the response to the question as follows. In February 2018, the Accountability Board were advised that the cost of delivering the Queensway Gateway Road project had increased due to a number of factors, including: one, project delays experienced through the planning process as a result of 2 applications for judicial review of the planning application. 2, challenging ground conditions during winter 2016-2017, resulting in lost days during the land remedial works. 3, the need to relocate the Bartlett's SEAT car showroom. And 4, the requirement for additional utility works to be undertaken. It was noted that it was the additional utilities works that had the greatest impact on the project cost. The update to the board in February 2018 indicated that Sea Change Sussex, as delivery partner, would also be contributing up to £2 million to support completion of the project. The additional LGF funding awarded to support delivery of the Queensway Gateway Road project was to be used in conjunction with the funding committed by Sea Change Sussex to address the cost increases outlined. The different funding sources were not allocated to specific areas of cost increase, and therefore the LGF funding was not specifically awarded to support the relocation of the Bartlett's car showroom, but could be applied to other eligible expenditure incurred in the delivery of the project. As a result, there is not a requirement for the Accountability Board to claw back the LGF funding awarded in this respect. It is acknowledged that there is currently a risk in relation to the funding previously committed by Sea Change Sussex to support project delivery, and this risk will be closely monitored by the Accountability Board as the project moves towards completion. That's the end of the response.
Okay, thanks, Adam. Thank you very much. Okay, if we move on to the first floor updates, the GBF update. Helen, you're going to start off, and I believe there's a change to one of the recommendations that will take us through as well.
Yes, there is.
Thank you.
So this report doesn't provide the usual full update on the Getting Building Fund programme, but instead just focuses on a couple of decisions which have a bearing on the ability of local partners to complete their GBF spend by the 31st of March 23 in accordance with government expectations. The first decision relates to the removal of the Swan Modular Housing Factory project from the GBF programme. The project was awarded GBF funding totalling 4.53 million in order to bring forward a new modular housing factory in Basildon. Delivery of the project has been progressing, but in December, Swan advised Essex County Council that their board had taken the decision to close their modular housing factory operations. As a result, delivery of the project was halted and Swan have committed to returning the GBF funding, which had already been spent to Essex County Council. It is noted in the report that while Swan have committed to repaying the funding, the repayment schedule has not yet been agreed, which places the onus on Essex County Council to repay from their own funds in the short term. It is also noted in the report that the value of the funding being returned to SELEC exceeds that sought by projects remaining on the pipeline. This presents challenges as to how the remaining funding should be used and means it will no longer be possible for government expectations in relation to full spend of the GBF funding by the 31st of March 23 to be met, which represents a reputational risk. Government advice has been sought on both points, and there was acknowledgement from government that the terms of the grant determination letter do not preclude the spend of GBF funding beyond March 2023, and that the use of the remaining funding can be determined locally as long as it is spent on capital works and on GBF compatible activity. Government has placed the responsibility for these decisions on the Section 151 officer of the accountable body. Initial conversations have been held with the accountable body, and it is proposed that to allow decisions to be taken at this meeting, GBF spend is allowed to continue into Q1 23-24 in exceptional circumstances, but that all GBF spend must be completed by the 30th of June 23. So before I move on, I just wanted to bring Michael in as the representative of the Section 151 officer to confirm that this approach is acceptable.
Thank you, Helen. In view of the advice received from government and in accordance with the grant conditions, I can confirm the Section 151 officer of the accountable body has no concerns with the recommendation to this board to allow GBF spend in Q1 of 2023-24.
Following on from that, it is intended that proposal for the use of the remaining GBF funding will be presented to the strategic board in February, following further discussions with the accountable body and the Section 151 officer. So taking into account the points I've raised so far, there is a proposed change to the recommendation in relation to the Swan Modular Housing Factory project. It is now proposed that Essex County Council are required to return the 2.481 million GBF, which is being considered for reallocation today, within 4 weeks of this board meeting, with the remaining balance to be returned by the 31st of March 2023. We would also require a further update on the status of the outstanding funding to be provided at the next board meeting on the 10th of March. This change has been proposed as whilst ensuring there is sufficient funding returned now to support the decisions being taken today, it also gives Essex County Council additional time to engage with Swan Housing about the required repayments. This approach is only possible as the value of the funding being returned exceeds the value of the funding sought by the projects remaining on the approved pipeline, meaning it will not impact on the reallocation of the funding. So moving on to the second decision in the report, this relates to the release of the 500,000 GBF funding, which is awarded to support the Assaila LFFM Phase 3 project at the last meeting. At the time of the funding decision, it was agreed that the funding would be released to Thurrock Council, as was the case for Phase 2 of the project. However, following a decision by Thurrock Council to issue a Section 114 notice, alternative options for the release of the funding have been considered. Since the award of the original GBF funding allocation, financial responsibility for Assaila has transferred from Thurrock Council to Southend-on-Sea City Council, and therefore Assaila did originally request that the Phase 3 funding was released to Southend rather than Thurrock. Ultimately, this wasn't possible as the process for creating the pipeline stated that upper tier local authorities had to be up to date with all reporting and year-end declaration requirements if they were to be eligible for receipt of additional GBF funding. And at that point, Southend were not up to date with their declarations. Following a review of options, it is considered that release of the GBF funding to Southend-on-Sea City Council is the most appropriate solution, as it will provide greater assurance to Essex County Council as accountable body for SELEC, and will also simplify the financial processes for Assaila. However, this would be subject to completion of the required year-end declaration. Southend-on-Sea City Council have undertaken work to progress these declarations, and is expected that they will be completed in the coming days, allowing release of the funding, assuming the board agree the change of recipient at this meeting. It should just be noted that due to delay in taking forward the required variation agreement, there has been a delay in committing the additional LFFN works, and there is therefore a risk that full spend may not be achievable by the 31st of March.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Any questions? Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a point of clarification. Helen said that, just can she clarify, it was to the 30th of June 2023?
Yes.
Because the officer said, and I think what he meant was that the 30th of June 2023 was in the financial year 23-24, which it is.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. So we'll be allowing spend into Q1 23-24 to the end of the June 23.
Right, fine. Now the after the pipeline projects have been satisfied, I think we were told that there with the money that's coming in, there will be further funds that will be available, and that this was going to be considered at the next board meeting. Is that right?
Yes, there will be.
But what will the board be considering? Because will it be considering just the amount, or will there be will we be asked for to submit further projects for consideration at that board meeting, so the board meeting will make a decision on how that was to be allocated?
The plan is to bring forward a proposal for how that funding will be utilised. So we're not seeking project submissions at this time. We're asking the Student Board to agree an approach to using that funding.
But surely, if presumably that funding will be the use of that funding comes in the extension to 30th of June. If it is to be allocated, aren't we sort of delaying matters a bit if it's going to the next board meeting and then we're going out asking for submissions and etc.? Then it's got to probably come back to the board, the next board meeting. And is there not a degree of urgency to actually start the process now before the board meeting? Of inviting applications against that fund, because time seems to be going to be running out.
It is. So the position agreed with the accountable body at the moment is that GBF funding that is already awarded to projects must be spent in full by the 30th of June.
Yes.
Because the strategic board have not agreed a process for use of the remaining funding, we can't seek applications without an agreed process.
Well, I hear what you say, but time is going to be running out if we've got to still stick, if those projects have still got to stick to the 30th of June timeline.
I need to have further discussions with the accountable body, but we would be looking to allow greater flexibility on funding that was awarded after this meeting, because it's not.
And is that flexibility likely to be an extension on that 30th of June deadline?
Yes, I think any projects that are awarded funding from that remaining balance will be allowed more time than the 30th of June to spend the money. Because we are aware that the processes that need to be followed would make spend by the 30th of June for money not currently allocated to projects.
Okay.
Impossible.
Right. Thank you, Helen, for that, and thank you, Chairman.
And just to clarify, any new projects that haven't yet been approved by the accountable body. Yeah.
Yes, so any projects that are already in the programme or are being considered today are expected to spend by the 30th of June. Anything after that, we would have to look at allowing more flexibility, just because obviously we are aware that our processes take some time.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Bob?
And can I just clarify what is the division? I should know this, but the division of labour between this board and the strategic board
So if strategic board comes forward with a process next, clearly there is a certain role for this board in terms of actually committing spending money. So I'm just trying to work out how all that plays out in the schedule of meetings and so on and so forth.
That's, yes, so the strategic board would agree the process in February. At that time, we would also try to establish a high level programme. Depending on what the process is, obviously the final decisions do ultimately come back to this board.
Exactly what I was thinking, yeah.
But there may need to be an additional strategic board discussion around prioritisation first, depending on the approach.
Okay, and presumably we might under some circumstances need, I mean, this is a one-off meeting. We may yet need to have another one, I presume.
Potentially.
Yeah, that's fine, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Arnold.
Thank you. Could I just sort of seek some reassurance over if there are any issues with Southend being able to declare, that you let us know, and likewise if they do declare and it's all in time, that you confirm with us that that has happened, just to keep us abreast of the situation, and just to reassure me that if they don't declare and we have to look at another option, that it will come back to another meeting to be discussed.
Yes, so absolutely, I'll keep in touch with officers at Thurrock around the status of funding. Yes, so I am confident. Southend have done a lot of work on the year-end declarations, and it's just a few tweaks that need to be made. So I am confident that will come forward. If obviously it doesn't, that will be subject to another decision by this board, whether that is that the funding is removed or that we find an alternative way of releasing the funding. It will be subject to a decision by this board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I think I've got everybody. Great. Okay, so we have two recommendations. One that has changed from the original paper. So if I take the one that's revised and just read that out to you again. So we are agreeing the removal of the Swan Modular Housing Factory project from the GBF programme, and the initial 2,480,768,000 GBF issued to Essex County Council should be returned to Essex County Council as accountable body for CLEP within 4 weeks of this board meeting for reallocation to alternative projects. The remaining £2,049,232 GBF should be returned to Essex County Council as accountable body for CLEP by the 31st of March 2023, and a further update on the status of this funding should be provided at our next board meeting on the 10th of March 2023. Do we agree with that recommendation?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Our second recommendation is to agree that the GBF funding awarded to support the Asala LFFN Phase 3 project can be released to Southend-on-Sea City Council rather than Thurrock Council as originally agreed, subject to provision of all outstanding local growth fund and GBF year-end declarations by Southend-on-Sea City Council. Do we agree?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. If we move then on to item number 6, we've got our GBF funding decisions paper. Helen.
Thank you. So this report considers the award of GBF funding to 4 projects which were prioritised for receipt of funding by the Strategic Board. All projects detailed in this report have received approval from the board for retention of the GBF funding to the 31st of March 2023. However, it should be noted that release of the GBF funding to support delivery of these projects will be subject to Essex County Council returning the funding which was allocated to the Swan Modular Housing Factory project. So 3 of the projects detailed in this report, the extension of full fibre broadband rollout in Essex to reach rural and hard to reach premises, Tyndall Square, Chelmsford and Jaywick Market in commercial space, were considered by the board at the last meeting, and additional GBF funding was awarded to support delivery of these projects. However, as the board will recall, following prioritisation decisions discussions by the Success Essex board, each of the 3 projects accepted a reduced additional GBF funding allocation, with a resultant funding gap being bridged by the relevant delivery partner. The Success Essex board requested that consideration be given to the inclusion of the remaining balance sought by the projects in the GBF project pipeline, and this proposal was presented to the Strategic Board in December. In light of the request to remove the Swan Modular Housing Factory project from the GBF programme, The strategic board agreed to the inclusion of this funding on the pipeline. As a result, the board are asked to consider the award of this funding at this meeting. So I'm just going to quickly run through those two projects and the tendering bikes and cycle infrastructure project, which is also included in the report. So firstly, the extension of full fibre broadband rollout in Essex to reach Royal and Hard to Reach premises project. This project is seeking additional GBF funding of £118,182 to help mitigate increasing costs associated with the delivery of full fibre broadband to 79 rural businesses and 185 rural residences, which were included in the original project scope. The additional GBF funding will replace funding that was previously committed by Essex County Council. Secondly, the Tyndall Square Chelmsford project. The project is seeking additional GBF funding of £118,181 due to increasing inflation rates, supply chain issues which have resulted in an extended delivery programme and costs associated with ensuring a safe working environment during the pandemic. And this funding will replace funding previously committed by Chelmsford City Council. The next project is the Jaywick Market and Commercial Space project. This project is seeking additional GBF funding of £118,181 to help mitigate cost increases associated with the discovery of asbestos and ground obstructions in the early stages of construction. The risk associated with these areas has been mitigated, and it is expected that some of the additional GBF funding will be used to return certain elements of the project scope following their removal as a result of increasing costs. And this funding will replace funding previously committed by a tendering district council. Finally, the tendering bikes and cycle infrastructure project. The project is seeking additional GBF funding of £300,200 to help mitigate increasing supply chain costs associated with the bicycles which are being purchased to support the bike loan scheme, which forms part of the original project scope. It is noted in the report that £600,000 of the original GBF funding allocation was set aside for the purchase of bikes, and it was expected that this would allow for the purchase of 1,620 bikes. However, due to increasing costs, it was only possible to purchase 1,300 bikes. There continues to be a waiting list for a bike loan scheme, and therefore the additional funding will be used to purchase a further 422 bikes. This will take the number of bikes to 1,722, which is an increase in the number forecast at the outset of the project. It should also be noted that it is intended that some of the funding will be used to purchase adapted and e-bikes, which will ensure that the project has a wider reach across the community and will help to open up further opportunities. The application for additional GBF funding has been considered by STEER as the ITE, as the original VCR was close to 2 to 1. And they've concluded that the project offers high value for money with a medium to low certainty of achieving this. There is an acknowledgement that provision of additional bikes, particularly adapted bikes, does make the bike loan scheme more accessible and offers access to a range of employment and skills opportunities to a larger number of people. But the application did not provide sufficient information for the ITE to confirm fully that the benefits offered by the additional bikes outweighed the impact of the additional cost on the VCR. Hence the low level of certainty attributed to the project. I just wanted to note that Section 151 officer sign off from Essex County Council in relation to the tendering bikes and cycle infrastructure project has now been received, and therefore this requirement has been removed from the recommendation. However, as it stands, we have not yet received approval from government for the increase in GBF funding allocation to these projects, and therefore this remains a condition of the award of the funding. And finally, just to note that all projects detailed in this report have committed to spending their full GBF funding allocation by the 31st of March 2023. And obviously delivery of these projects will be closely monitored and any risks flagged to this board at the earliest opportunity.
Thank you, Helen. Any questions? Okay, thank you. As an aside, the tendering scheme sounds amazing, actually. It would be really, I know outside of that, see that promote a lot of projects, but it sounds for that particular, those communities sounds really impressive if it's been so successful. So it's great that we are considering awarding more money to it. Okay.
I might just say in relation to that, you are absolutely right. And more importantly, I think overall, the ability to get people to jobs, I think is really significant. This is an area where you either have a car or you don't get anywhere. And the ability to get training and other things has proved absolutely invaluable, and it has been popular.
Yes, Great. It's one of those feel-good projects.
Yes,
Nice
it's
to
actually,
see.
you're right.
Okay, so we have 4 recommendations to agree as a board. I'll read them out separately, so we'll take each one one by one. So our first one is to agree the award of an additional £118,182 GBF to Essex County Council for the extension of full fibre broadband rollout in Essex to reach the rural and hard to reach premises project, subject to government approval of the increase in GBF funding allocation. Great, thank you. Our second is to agree the award of an additional £181 GBF to Essex County Council for the Tyndall Square Chelmsford project, subject to government approval of the increase in GBF funding allocation. Do we agree? Thank you. Thirdly, we agree the award of an additional £118,181 GBF to Essex County Council for the Jaywick Market and Commercial Space project, subject to government approval of the increase in GBF funding allocation.
Agreed.
Agreed, thank you. And finally, agree the award of an additional £300,200 GBF to Essex County Council for the tendering bikes and cycle infrastructure project, subject to government approval of the increase in GBF funding allocation.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. Item number 7, Helen.
Thank you. So, following on from the previous item, this report considers the award of funding to 4 further projects which are prioritised for receipt of funding by the strategic board. All projects detailed in this report require approval from the board for retention of the GBF funding to the 31st of March 23 or beyond. And again, release of the GBF funding awarded to these projects will be subject to return of the funding from Essex County Council that was awarded to the Swan Modular Housing Factory project. So the first project under consideration is the Seven Sisters Country Park Visitor Infrastructure Uplift project, which is seeking additional GBF investment of £84,100. This funding is being sought to mitigate cost increases which have been experienced as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and Brexit impacts on the construction industry. This additional funding will allow the project to be delivered in accordance with the approved business case. Delivery of the project is progressing on site and is expected to complete in March 2023. The second project is a Discovery Park Incubator project, which is seeking additional GBF investment of £250,000. This funding has been sought to help mitigate increases in labour and materials costs as a result of rising inflation levels. This additional funding will allow the project to be delivered in accordance with the approved business case. Delivery of the project is progressing on site and is expected to be complete by July 23, with spend of the GBA funding complete by the 31st of March 23. The third project is the Enterprise Centre for Horizon 120 Business Innovation Park project, which is seeking additional GBF investment of £641,924. Construction of the Enterprise Centre has been completed and the building is now fully operational. However, the additional GBF funding has been sought to mitigate cost increases which were experienced during the build programme. These costs arose due to the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, Brexit and high inflation levels, which resulted in an extended delivery programme and complications of removing spoil from the site. The application for additional GBF funding also sought funding to enable delivery of an extension to the existing car park. This element of the funding request has been removed as it has been established that, based on the delivery programme provided, the GBF funding could not have been spent by the 31st of March 2023, even at the time of application, and therefore the works did not comply with the requirements of the pipeline. And just to note that Section 151 officer sign-off from Essex County Council in relation to this project has now been received and the recommendations have been updated accordingly. All 3 of these projects meet the requirements agreed by the board for projects which are seeking retention of GBF funding allocations beyond March 2022 and have committed to spending their full GBF allocation by the 31st of March 23. The final project is the Techport Phase 2 project, which is seeking GBF investment of £850,000. Phase 1 of the project currently sits within the GBF programme, and additional GBF funding has been sought to bring forward a further phase of the project. Phase 2 of the project will support the refurbishment of 2 further casemates, creating new space for small businesses, craft workshops, retail, food and entertainment uses. The work is expected to complete by June 23. The business case for the project has been reviewed by the ITE, who has concluded that the project offers high value for money with high to medium certainty of achieving this. Techport Phase 2 project does not fully meet the requirements agreed by the board for projects which are seeking retention of GBF funding allocations beyond March 2022, as it will not be possible for the full GBF allocation to be spent by the 31st of March 2023. It's currently forecast that 85,000 or 10% of the GBF ask will be spent in Q1 23-24. As discussed earlier, advice has now been received from government, and following discussions with the accountable body, it has been agreed that GBF spend can extend into Q1 23-24 in exceptional circumstances. Assurances have been provided by Kent County Council and a delivery partner that GBF spend will complete in Q1, and therefore the recommendations have been amended to allow award of the full 850,000 sought at this meeting. As referenced under the previous item, we have not yet received approval from government for these changes, but I will be following that up this afternoon. And delivery of the projects will be closely monitored and risks flagged to this board.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Any questions from the board?
I've just been asked to raise the issue of the importance of an SLA variation between Essex and SELEC, and just to ask how that's going. Is there anything we need to do in that connection, or is the work progressing?
Is that in relation to the decisions taken at the last meeting?
I believe so, yeah.
They are in progress. Have they reached you?
Yeah, they've gone through me.
Okay.
Okay, I think they're nearing completion.
That's
Actually, yeah, I think I saw confirmation overnight.
okay.
That they're done.
That's what I was asked to do, so I've done it. I'll double check that, but they've okay through overnight. So
Thanks, Councillor Bennett. Any other questions? Okay, so we have 4 recommendations to discuss. Again, I'll go through them separately. So first and foremost, can we agree the award of an additional 84,100 GBF to East Sussex County Council for the Seven Sisters Country Park Visitor Infrastructure Uplift Project, subject to government approval of the increase in GBF funding allocation, and agree that the GBF funding can be retained against the project beyond March 2022 for a maximum period of 12 months to 31st of March 2023. Do we agree?
Agreed.
Thank you. Secondly, do we agree the award of an additional £250,000 GBF to Kent County Council for the Discovery Park Incubator project, subject to government approval of the increase in GBF funding allocation, and agree that the GBF funding can be retained against the project beyond March 22 for a maximum period of 12 months to 31st of March 23. Do we agree?
Agreed.
Thank you. And our third revised recommendation is to agree the award of £850,000 GBF to Kent County Council for the Techport Phase 2 project, which has been assessed as offering high value for money with high to medium certainty of achieving this, subject to government approval of credit conclusion within the GBF programme, and agree that the GBF funding can be retained against the project beyond March 2022 for a maximum period of 15 months to the 30th of June 2023.
Agreed.
Agreed, thank you. And finally, agree the award of an additional 641,924 GBF to Essex County Council for the Enterprise Centre for Horizon 120 Business and Innovation Park project, subject to government approval of the increase in GBF funding allocation, and agree that the GBF funding can be retained against the project beyond March 2022 for a maximum period of 12 months to the 31st of March 2023. Do we agree?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are our main items, I think, then. So moving swiftly through, the date of the next meeting is for Friday, the 10th of March. And we are expected to be at the launch pad at Southend Airport Business Park for that meeting on the 10th of March. Thank you. So urgent business, we do have one item of urgent business. I think we're expecting a statement provided by Councillor Arnold from Thurrock Council in relation to the issuing of the Section 114 notice. So Councillor Arnold.
Thank you. The initial impact of the S114 notice is that effectively costs are reviewed to ensure only essential statutory works continue. This is managed through a panel process, and each request is considered on its merits. This sits alongside a wider transformation piece at the council, which has commenced but remains at an early stage. In respect of the projects with CLEP funding, the projects remain in the capital programme with funding allocated. The project leads continue to assess delivery and associated budgetary impacts, and alongside this, a new governance structure around major projects is being implemented. Consequently, supported by the new processes in place, we'll continue to report progress on to the CLEP board on the relevant projects. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Arnold. Okay, thank you. So I don't think we have any other urgent business. So thank you very much. Can I just say before we conclude, thank you for making the time to come here today. As councillor Chambers and councillor Goff pointed out earlier, we may well have a number of meetings where we need to convene for a short amount of time in order to make sure that we are discharging our duties correctly as an accountable body. So I appreciate and know that some of you had to make journeys to get there, but we need to do this in person. So I very much appreciate the time that you've taken today to be here today. So thank you very much, and see you in March.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Did try to make it 40.